Be ready? Start. The concept of electoral bonds was introduced by the Government of India in 2017 as a mechanism to bring transparency in political funding. However, the scheme has been a subject of intense debate and legal scrutiny, with the matter now being heard in the Supreme Court of India. Let us delve deeper into this issue, examining its origins, the legal challenges, and the arguments being presented before the apex court. Electoral bonds are essentially financial instruments issued by the State Bank of India through which individuals, companies, and organizations can donate money to political parties. These bonds are available in denominations ranging from rupees 1000 to rupees 1 crore and can be purchased during specific periods notified by the government. Donors can choose the party they wish to fund, and political parties can encash the bonds through their verified bank accounts. The primary argument in favor of electoral bonds is that they eliminate the use of cash in political funding and ensure that transactions are routed through formal banking channels. By doing so, proponents argue the scheme curtails black money and enhances accountability in the political financing process. However, the scheme has also faced significant criticism. One of the most contentious issues is anonymity afforded to donors. While the transactions are conducted through banks, the identity of the donor is not disclosed to the public or even to the Election Commission of India. Critics argue that this undermines the very purpose of transparency, as the voters have no way of knowing who is funding which political party and in what amounts. The controversy deepened when amendments were made to laws governing political donations. Key changes included the removal of a cap on corporate donations, which previously limited companies to donating only 7.5% of their average net profits from the last 3 years. Additionally, companies are now raised concerns about the possibility of shell companies being used to funnel unaccounted money into the political system. In 2018, petitions challenging the constitutional validity of the electoral bonds scheme were filed in the Supreme Court. The petitioners, including civil society organizations and political activists, argue that the scheme violates citizens' right to know and infringes upon the principles of free and fair elections. They contend that the lack of transparency in political funding creates an uneven playing field, as ruling parties may have access to disproportionate resources while the opposition struggles with limited funding. The Election Commission of India and the Reserve Bank of India have also raised concerns. In its submission to the Supreme Court, the Election Commission stated that electoral bonds could potentially lead to anonymous donations and obscure the source of political funding. The Reserve Bank, on the other hand, has flagged concerns about the introduction of these bonds bypassing its regulatory authority over currency and financial instruments. The government, however, defends the scheme on multiple grounds. It argues that anonymity is essential to protect donors from potential harassment or backlash. It also asserts that the scheme also introduced a formal mechanism for political donations, reducing reliance on illegal cash contributions. Furthermore, the government claims that information about donors is available to the State Bank of India, ensuring that authorities can trace the source of funds if required. The Supreme Court has been hearing arguments from both sides and is expected to deliver a verdict that could have far reaching implications for electoral reforms in India. During the hearings, the petitioners have emphasized the need for greater transparency, urging the court to strike down the amendments that enabled the electoral bonds scheme. They argue that the scheme in its current form compromises the democratic process and allows for the undue influence of money in politics. The government, in its defense, has highlighted the safeguards built into the system, such as the limited time window for purchasing bonds and the involvement of a government authorized bank. It has also pointed out that the scheme applies equally to all political parties, ensuring a level playing field. As the Supreme Court deliberates on this critical issue, the debate around electoral bonds has sparked broader discussions about the need for reforms in political funding. The verdict is likely to address questions about the balance between donor anonymity and voter transparency, the role of regulatory institutions, and the overarching principles of accountability and fairness in democratic governance. In conclusion, the electoral bonds scheme reflects the complex interplay between policy objectives and democratic principles. While the government aims to tackle black money and formalize political donations, the lack of transparency raises legitimate concerns about the integrity of the electoral process. Over.